Hello and welcome to the Mad Leprechaun. My name is Mert Walsh. Last year, whilst I was in Scotland at Knockhill, I caught up with some of the important and influential people in the Scottish sidecar community. Namely, Boris Stroud. He was my first victim. So join me after the intro if you want to know a little bit more about Boris Stroud and Marin. Marin is on an awful lot of sidecars, well, worldwide. So I wanted to get to the bottom of why Boris was so passionate about sidecars and where the passion comes from. Join me after the intro for a chat with Boris Stroud. I am with Boris Stroud of Marin and Marin Motorsports.
Yeah, that's correct.
Thanks ever so much, Boris, for your time today.
You're welcome.
Would you tell me, and hopefully the folks at home, a little bit about you and your background, please?
So, I've been involved in sidecar racing for many years, namely the last 8 years. I raced some years ago when I was in my early teens, 17 right up to kind of 28, and then came out of sport, having had a very bad accident offshore. When I retired at that point in my life, I decided it was a good idea that, you know, if I ever could make it, I'd come back to sidecar racing. And my parting shots with my passenger Colvin Denholm at the time was, if I ever make things happen in my life, I'm going to come back to racing, and I'm going to come to make a difference to sidecar racing in its entirety, you know.
Yeah.
Some years ago, came down to East Fortune and discovered there was only 4 sidecars on the grid. One was in the paddock, was broken, and 3 that were on the track.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a bit distressing to see, you know, because Scotland's got a long heritage of sidecars.
Yeah.
And wanting to, you know, bolster the numbers, I got with the SSRC chairman, Gavin Brownie, and Murray Mackay, who's the administrator and treasurer, and secretary of the club, and they were taking roles, so we decided to form a strategy to see if we could get something organised to see if we could pull back the sidecars.
Brilliant.
So that said, we managed to get things organised, and we pulled the first year, I think, somewhere in the region around 20 sidecars back, and then we started looking at how we could get bikes on the grid.
Yep.
That were sitting at home and guys couldn't afford a race. So we came in with subsidised entries, and we did that predominantly in East Fortune.
Right.
So we've managed to pull back the numbers, and I think the second or the third year maybe we had 40 sidecars racing down there, but it was different categories, obviously, you know, F1s and F2s, open class. But that's kind of where we were. Yeah.
Now, I've obviously, since I've been in the sport over the last 3 seasons, I've wandered round both the F1 and the F2 paddock, and I've seen Marin, which is on your chest, on an awful lot of sidecars, but it's you don't just put your name on sidecars in the UK, Scotland and England. I've seen it, it's worldwide, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we kind of use the expression, you know, our sponsorship or our involvement, we don't just want to do for the individual, we want to do that for the many, and we've reached out, you know, to various organisations. The lads in Japan, we sponsor them, you know, we look after them as best we can.
Yeah.
Some of the lads in Australia, you know, we've looked after them. Some of the guys in New Zealand, and in the States and Canada.
Yeah.
So call it our net, you know, we've cast it wide to make sure we support to keep sidecars healthy globally, you know, not just in Scotland. Scotland, predominantly, this is the home of sidecar racing for me, as far as I'm concerned.
It's where your heart is, and
yes,
rightfully
absolutely.
so. Yeah. I know that people like Mark Gash in Ireland, obviously me being Irish, he speaks very highly of you. I know you've reached out to Mark a few times and helped out in that neck of the woods as well. So
I mean, I think, you know, obviously the whole Irish sidecar scene, you know, is something that needs support, you know, and I think a lot of people don't understand, you know, that our club sport is absolutely critical to the feeder sports into the F1 and the world class, you know, so we should all be supporting each other.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about Marin and what Marin is as a company?
Yeah.
Please.
I mean, Marin as a company has been born out of my involvement in the oil and gas industry.
Yeah.
So we, as a company, we've evolved with both subsea tooling. One of the tools is the Evo tools, but evolution of tools. And the principles in that are a hydrodynamic subsea excavation tool that's used for excavating very large holes in the seabed, where we've got to take structures out of the seabed.
I understood big holes in the seabed. That was about it. Sorry.
We're getting into the technical speak, but essentially, it's a subsea excavation company with tools that are used globally. I mean, I'm the only expert in the world that does what I do,
Right.
and I'm sought after by some of the big blue chips, Shell and BP, and some of the guys when they lose their assets. So we service their needs, and essentially we are kind of global. We're in the States, and we are in various other different countries as well, but we support globally. We're just a small Scottish business, that is moving forward, and servicing the industry.
Brilliant. Your passion for sidecars, where does that really come from? I know we touched on it a minute ago, but
I guess being a young lad, and watching Jock Taylor racing, and for me, Jock was pivotal and inspiring, not just me, but so many other people, in the sidecar fraternity.
Yeah.
And watching him come from a very humble background, and then race with the likes of, Kenny Andrews and the likes of, Louis Ward and Jimmy Neal and these people that are there. Jock was inspirational in so many different ways, both in his personal life and when he went on the track. To watch this guy go around the TT in 108 mile an hour, I think 0.39, and we've only moved on 13 mile an hour since then, but the bike and the technology then was so,
primitive compared to
where we are now.
Yeah.
So he's our hero, I think.
And rightfully so, because I've spoken to Steve Webster, thanks to you, and Kenny, and they all say basically the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, Steve and that, I go back a fair ways with Steve. I was very fortunate to have acquired a sidecar from Dennis Brown, who subsequently ripped me off, right? But anyway.
It's another story.
It's another story, yeah. But anyway, that was Tony's first sidecar. We managed to get that back, but Steve, he was here when I first tested my first sidecar, and we had a bit of banter when he was climbing the ranks to world champion. Steve's 10 times world champion, so he's well respected in the sport. But it's a big family, a very tight family.
So can you tell me a little bit about the sidecar you have here that was belonged to Jock?
So many years ago, Jock's sidecar was it was actually sitting in a museum in Afford, and Jack Muldoon and the restoration team managed to acquire the sidecar. They subsequently took and they restored the sidecar where it was, and then in, I think it was 2019, the Charterhouse got involved in potentially auctioning Jock's sidecar.
Wow.
So we were in a place where we wanted to make sure that we protected Jock's legacy, and in the background I've quietly collected lots of things to do with Jock, lots of memorabilia.
Yep.
And I've got a fair collection of stuff that's there, but we'd like to try and get it into some kind of museum. But the bike came up and it didn't meet the reserves at Charterhouse, and then we approached Jack and had a discussion with him, and we expressed our interest, and we signed off on a confidentiality agreement of an SPA, which is a sale purchase agreement.
Yeah.
And the bike was acquired with the company's funding to protect it for the preservation in Scotland, for sidecar racing in Scotland.
And the Scottish heritage, it's part of Scottish heritage,
absolutely.
And Jock's heritage, and
since then,
legacy, rather.
We've kind of gone on a little bit. We've now got 3 of Jock's bikes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and well, a lot of people will know the Scots of Haddington bike.
Right.
So that was a bike that Jock and Louis raced. Lots of people come to try and correct me about which bike it is, but I've been rest assured it's definitely an Irison bike that's there, and the TZ was associated with it. But we're starting this year to get the restoration of that bike up and running again.
Well, hopefully you invite me back up and we'll revisit some of the other bikes.
I'm happy
I'd like
to do that, and I'm happy for You know, if you're in the area or any of the guys are there, want to come and see the workshop, you know, and what we're going to be doing,
Yeah.
you know, come and do it. And Louis Ward, he's there as well, you know, so
Fantastic.
he's taking the lead, and he calls it his bike. So
Right.
it'll be good to see that bike, you know, either paraded or back on the track or
Yeah.
whatever. And then we've got the final bike, which was his Windle, the
Yeah.
very first one, and that's where the expression "the worm" came from.
Right.
Jock coined that phrase because it wiggled up and down the track, and he didn't like it very much.
Right. I'm happy if you are, and thanks ever so
I'm
much
delighted.
for your time. Pardon me. I realise you're really busy this weekend because you're racing yourself.
Yeah.
And you've got lots more of the parade lap and stuff to do later on.
Yeah.
Thanks ever so much for your time, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, buddy.
Bye.
Hopefully you've enjoyed that one. If you have enjoyed this video, please leave a thumbs up. If you haven't enjoyed this video for any particular reason whatsoever, please feel free to leave a thumbs down. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment in the comment section below. That way I can talk to you and find out what you think. There is a couple more chats coming up on the channel in the not too distant future, so stick around, stay tuned for that. Until then, take care of yourself. Bye bye.